Let's begin with something you may not want to hear. It won't be easy, it may sting, but it's the truth. And sometimes the truth is the only medicine that works, no matter how bitter it tastes going down. You've been lied to for a long time, by movies, by songs, by people around you. They all told you that what you feel is love, that ache in your chest, that pounding in your ears, that desperate pull towards someone who sometimes gives you warmth and sometimes gives you cold silence. They said that was love, but it isn't. What you call love is often just fear in disguise. The fear of being alone, the fear of not being chosen, the fear that without another person's attention, you don't exist. That without someone to validate you, to text you back, to make you feel seen, you're not enough. Let's pause here. Ask yourself, truly, what would happen if that person disappeared tomorrow? Would you still feel whole, or would you collapse, like a building that was only standing because someone else was holding it up? That tightness in your chest when they don't reply, that shaking in your hands when you see they were online but didn't respond, that habit of checking their last seen again and again, hoping for a sign, that late night scrolling through their photos, trying to decode meaning from nothing. That isn't love. It's anxiety. It's emotional dependency wearing a romantic costume. It's a desperate hunger for reassurance because no one ever taught you how to soothe yourself without another person. And the worst part, you call this chaos passion. You call this ache connection, but it's not. It's an addiction. Yes, you are addicted to them, to the feeling they give you, to the way their attention feels like medicine to your wounds, like proof that you matter. They are your emotional drug, because somewhere along the way, you forgot how to give yourself what you now seek from them. You look for safety in someone else's arms because facing the silence of your own mind terrifies you. You call it love because it fills a void. But that void has always been there, and it will still be there after they're gone, unless you decide to stop patching it with people and start healing it from within. So let's call it what it really is. This is not love, it's emotional hunger. And emotional hunger is not romantic. It's destructive. It makes you smaller. It turns you into a reflection of someone else's mood. If they are happy, you feel peace. If they pull away, your world crashes. You become addicted to their presence the way a drowning person clings to a raft. But there's a problem with that. They are not your raft. They are a person with their own wounds, their own fears, their own inconsistencies. And the moment you give someone else the power to define your worth, you lose yourself. You don't just love them. You mold yourself to fit into the shape of what you think they want, just so they won't leave. You start lying to yourself. You say things like, they're just busy, when in truth, they're avoiding you. You say, it's normal to feel this nervous, when in truth, your body is screaming that something is off. You say, I just love deeply, when in truth, you're afraid that if you don't offer everything, you'll be left with nothing. This isn't your fault. Most of us were never taught the difference between love and attachment. We grew up learning that love is sacrifice, that to love someone means to prioritize them above ourselves, that love must hurt to be real, that longing means devotion. But real love doesn't make you feel like you're dying inside. Real love doesn't make you afraid to speak, to ask, to rest, to just be. Real love doesn't make you feel like you have to audition for someone's attention every day. What you're experiencing is emotional addiction, and it operates exactly like any other addiction. Dopamine hits when they reply, withdrawal when they ignore you. The highs are euphoric, the lows are unbearable. You wait by your phone like it's a lifeline. You read their silence like it's a punishment. You base your worth on how quickly they respond. This is not sustainable. And it's not love. It's the illusion of connection, built on the terror of abandonment. It's not devotion. It's survival. It's not romance. It's reaction. And here's where Carl Jung, yes, the psychologist, cuts through everything with terrifying clarity. He once said, the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. But are you being transformed, or are you being erased? Because if you are shrinking yourself, silencing yourself, betraying yourself just to keep someone else close, you are not transforming. You are dissolving, You are disappearing into their shadow, and that is not love. You've seen the signs, you've felt the unease. Now let's go deeper, not into the behavior, but into the root. Because attachment doesn't start in your adult relationships. It doesn't begin with a person who ignores your messages or someone you fell too hard for. It begins much earlier. It begins the first time you felt that you had to earn love. Maybe it was subtle. Maybe it was a quiet, good girl when you obeyed. Maybe it was silence when you cried too loudly, or a sigh when you expressed anger. Maybe no one ever told you you had to be perfect to be loved, but somehow you learned it anyway. That's how attachment begins, with a child who feels invisible unless they behave a certain way, with a child who starts adapting, becoming what others need just to be kept close. And that child, they never left. They're still there, inside you, hiding behind your adult mask, whispering, "Don't mess this up. Don't be too much. Don't be too needy." They'll leave. Carl Jung called this the wounded inner child. Not a metaphor, a psychological reality. This part of you holds all the unmet needs, the abandoned cries, the silent deals you made with yourself to be loved. And when someone walks into your life who offers even a glimpse of affection, the child inside clings. Not because it's love, but because it's familiar. That's why you tolerate things you know you shouldn't. That's why you forgive what breaks you. That's why you stay in situations where your spirit is shrinking. Because your nervous system has been trained to equate pain with intimacy. You don't know how to receive love without paying for it, with your silence, your self-worth, your boundaries. And here's the most dangerous part. When you don't heal that wound, you begin falling in love with potential, not reality. You don't see people as they are. You see them as what they could become. If only they grew up a little. If only they stopped avoiding intimacy. If only they healed their trauma. So you stay, not with the person in front of you, but with the version in your head. You live in hope. You invest your soul in a future that may never arrive. And in doing so, you abandon the most important person in the relationship, yourself, because your dreams become smaller. Your light becomes dimmer. Your truth becomes quieter, all in the name of love. But this is not love. This is self-betrayal disguised as loyalty. This is emotional martyrdom, not devotion. You are not being noble. You are being depleted. Let's take this even deeper. Because attachment has another face, one harder to recognize, even more addictive. Drama. Yes, attachment, when left unchecked, becomes addicted to emotional chaos. You begin associating intensity with love. You equate arguments with passion. You believe that jealousy means someone cares. You start feeling anxious when things are too calm. You sabotage peace because it feels unnatural. You chase the high of reconciliation, mistaking the emotional roller coaster for something meaningful. But calm is not emptiness. It's just unfamiliar. And because you've lived in chaos for so long, anything healthy feels boring. So you reject the person who respects your boundaries. You pull away from the one who doesn't trigger your insecurity. Why? Because they don't fit the emotional rhythm your wounds are used to. It's not that they're wrong for you. It's that your pain doesn't know what to do when there's nothing to fight. And that is the most painful irony of all. You crave peace, but push it away. You want love, but only know how to survive it. This is the loop, the trap. The reason why people who love deeply often suffer deeply. Because love, when rooted in fear, becomes a prison. And you keep walking back in, thinking the door will finally lock you in safety, only to find yourself alone again. Here's what few people will tell you. The longer you stay attached to someone who cannot meet you, the more distant you become from yourself. You stop listening to your intuition. You override your boundaries. You confuse longing with destiny. You say, "But I can't stop thinking about them," as if obsession is a sign of love instead of trauma. You think, "If I just love them enough, they'll change." But love doesn't fix people. Healing does. And healing has to come from within, not from your effort to keep a relationship alive. Let's go back to Jung. He said that whatever we do not bring into consciousness will appear in our lives as fate. This means that unless you become aware of your patterns, your fears, your unhealed wounds, you will keep choosing the same kind of person in a different body. Same script, different actor, the one who doesn't see you, the one who is emotionally unavailable, the one who gives just enough to keep you hooked, but not enough to help you heal. And every time you think this one will be different, but it's not. Because your wounds are writing your love story, not your wisdom. So how do we change this? We stop looking outward. We stop blaming the other person for not loving us the way we need. We stop waiting for someone to save us from our own emptiness. And instead we ask, what part of me believes I am unworthy of love unless I suffer? What part of me still fears being alone more than being broken? What part of me was told, silently or directly, that love must be earned, not given? That's where the real healing begins, not with a new relationship, not with a better partner, but with the radical act of turning inward and facing what has been ignored for far too long. Because the love you crave, the one that sees you, holds you, celebrates you, cannot come while you're still busy abandoning yourself. And until you meet your own inner child with compassion, you will keep asking someone else to parent them. Until you affirm your own worth, you will keep needing someone else to prove it. Until you fall in love with your own presence, you will keep chasing someone else's. But the truth is, no one can give you what you refuse to give yourself. Not sustainably, not consistently, not without cost. And when you understand that, really understand it, you stop begging for crumbs. You stop mistaking emotional starvation for passion. You stop calling suffering romantic. Because you realize you were never asking for too much. You were just asking the wrong person. And now it's time to stop asking. It's time to start giving to yourself. So here you are, tired, confused, aching. You've given everything. You've loved with your heart wide open, but somehow you're the one left bleeding. And now the truth knocks on your door. It's time to let go. But what does that even mean? Letting go sounds so simple in theory, but in practice, it feels like death. It feels like tearing a part of your soul away, because you didn't just love them. You built a world around them, and now that world is collapsing, and you're standing in the rubble asking, who am I without them? You see, detachment is not about shutting down. It's not emotional numbness. It's not giving up on love or becoming hard-hearted. No, detachment is a sacred act of returning home to yourself. Because you can't truly hold space for love while your hands are chained by fear. You cannot grow when your energy is constantly spent trying to be enough for someone who cannot see you. Real detachment begins the moment you understand that letting go isn't loss. It's alignment. You're not losing them. You're rediscovering you. You're reclaiming the parts of yourself that you once abandoned just to keep the connection alive. The hobbies you gave up, the opinions you silenced, the needs you swallowed, the version of you that you shelved just to be lovable. And yes, it will hurt, because you've confused their presence with your identity for so long that their absence feels like death. But it's not death, it's birth. The birth of a self who no longer tolerates crumbs, a self who no longer sacrifices peace for proximity, a self who doesn't beg, doesn't chase, doesn't shrink. Carl Jung spoke of individuation, the process of becoming whole, not half of a couple, not someone's mirror, not a puzzle piece trying to fit, but a full integrated human being. That's the path you're now walking, and it's not easy, because the road to wholeness is filled with shadows, not the kind cast by others, but the ones you've hidden from yourself. All the things you suppressed to be lovable, all the emotions you were told were too much, all the dreams you postponed while waiting to be chosen. They return now, not to haunt you, but to invite you to be seen, to be held, to be reintegrated. And this is where true healing begins. When you stop seeing yourself as broken because someone couldn't love you. When you stop using love as anesthesia. When you realize that your worth never depended on their approval. That being left was not proof that you were unworthy, but that you had outgrown the cage you once called love. Read that again. You did not lose love. You outgrew the version of love that required you to abandon yourself. That version of love said, be quiet. It said, be available at all times. It said, your needs are a threat. It said, You only matter when I say you do. And now you've said no more. Now your soul demands something higher. Not love as performance, but love as presence. Not a bond built on trauma, but a connection built on truth. So you start walking away, not because you hate them, but because you finally love yourself enough to stop breaking into pieces just to keep someone else whole. And that is radical self-respect. It's standing in the mirror after nights of crying and saying, I deserve better, even if I don't fully believe it yet. It's deleting the number, blocking the access, silencing the memory, not out of vengeance, but out of protection. It's sitting alone on a Friday night, not because no one invited you out, but because for the first time, your own company is enough. It's telling yourself, even if I'm not okay right now, I'm becoming someone who will be. This is the turning point, the moment when the pain of staying begins to outweigh the fear of leaving. The moment when you realize that no amount of love from another can compensate for the love you're withholding from yourself. And in that moment, something shifts. You no longer want to convince someone to choose you. You no longer crave their validation. You no longer perform to be picked because your value is no longer in question. You begin to understand that peace is more precious than attention. That self-respect is more powerful than desire. That presence without pressure is more sacred than constant reassurance. And when this awareness lands, you stop asking, why didn't they stay? What could I have done differently? Instead, you start asking, why did I stay after I saw the truth? What part of me needed this pain to feel alive? Because love does not require the sacrifice of your soul. Love does not ask you to be smaller, quieter, easier. Love says, come as you are, not come only when you've shrunk enough to fit into someone else's wounds. And as this awareness grows, you become different, not colder, not harder, but clearer. You become less available to chaos, less reactive to silence, less interested in half-love. You no longer chase people who leave. You no longer romanticize the inconsistent. You no longer build altars to people who never knelt at yours. And slowly, the pain becomes power. The silence becomes peace. The emptiness becomes space, not for someone else, but for you, to return, to rebuild, to rise. And that's when you realize detachment is not the end of love. It is the beginning of real love. Love that flows from wholeness, love that is offered, not extracted, love that doesn't demand sacrifice to be sustained. You no longer say, I need you to complete me. You now say, I choose to share my completeness with you. And that difference changes everything, because when you detach, not from love, but from fear, from fantasy, from emotional addiction, you come home to yourself. And there, finally, you find a kind of safety no one can take from you. You've walked through fire. You've faced the illusion. You've let go of the fantasy. You've begun the process of reclaiming yourself. And now, something begins to shift. At first, it's subtle, almost imperceptible. You sleep a little more peacefully. You speak a little more honestly. You laugh, not because someone is watching, but because your chest finally has space to breathe. And then you notice something strange. The people you used to attract, the ones who fed off your neediness, who manipulated your craving for closeness, they stop appearing. They don't feel drawn to you anymore because you're no longer vibrating at the frequency of lack. You're no longer looking to be saved. You're not sending unconscious signals of complete me anymore. You're not handing out silent invitations for someone else to fix what you won't face inside. Instead, you radiate something else, wholeness, and that energy repels those who feed on emptiness. But it draws in something far more rare. People who don't want to consume you. People who want to walk beside you. This is the quiet reward of detachment. Not loneliness, but elevation. You no longer entertain chaos. You no longer chase mixed signals. You no longer negotiate your worth for scraps of attention. Because now you've tasted something richer, emotional peace. A peace that doesn't depend on someone texting you back. A peace that doesn't shatter when someone walks away. A peace that isn't conditional on approval, attention, or presence. And in that space, a new kind of love can finally take root. Not love that screams, don't leave me, but love that says, you are free and I am too. Not love that clings out of fear, but love that chooses to stay because it's safe to be fully seen. Not love that costs your dignity, but love that honors it. Carl Jung understood this. He didn't define love as just emotion or attraction. He saw it as the outcome of something deeper, integration. He called it the self, the true, whole, centered identity that emerges when your inner opposites unite. When your feminine and masculine energies are no longer at war. When your shadow is no longer repressed, but acknowledged and accepted. When your wounds are no longer gaping, but witnessed and cared for. From that self, you no longer love from hunger. You love from abundance. You no longer give to be valued. You give because you're full. You no longer fall in love with potential. You meet people where they are and decide with clarity if that's where you want to stay. And if not, you let go. Not out of coldness, but out of alignment. You begin to understand that the love of your life was never a person. It was your evolution, your path, your becoming. The love of your life is the moment you stopped abandoning yourself. The love of your life is the silence that no longer scared you. The love of your life is the mirror you finally looked into, not to fix, but to accept. And here's the most uncomfortable truth of all. Sometimes what you call love is simply familiar pain, the echo of childhood longing, the reenactment of unhealed patterns, the comfort of being rejected in ways that feel like home. But now, you've seen through it. You've peeled back the layers. You've realized that not every strong feeling is love, that not every bond is meant to last, that not every person who made your heart race was meant to stay. And that realization, though it breaks you open, is what sets you free. You no longer ask, will they choose me? Now you ask, am I choosing me? You no longer pray to be needed. You embody your own necessity. You no longer fight for a place in someone's world, because you've built your own, and it's peaceful, and it's powerful, and it doesn't require anyone's validation to exist. And yes, it will get lonely sometimes. You'll miss the high of codependent closeness. You'll crave the chaos of emotional intensity. You'll question whether this quiet strength is worth the aching solitude. But then you'll remember, what you called intensity was often instability. What you called closeness was often enmeshment. What you called love was often just the fear of being alone. And now, solitude no longer feels like punishment. It feels like sanctuary, like coming home to a version of you that doesn't need to perform, please, or prove anything. This is the rebirth, the clean gaze, the softened heart that no longer begs. Because now, you don't chase love. You become it. You don't seek to be chosen. You recognize that you are the chooser. You don't say, I need you to be happy. You say, I'm happy, and I'd love to share it with you, but I'll be okay either way. And this, right here, is the deepest love you'll ever know. It doesn't come with fireworks. It comes with calm. It doesn't rush in with drama. It arrives with clarity. It doesn't make you feel like you're falling. It makes you feel like you're returning to yourself, to wholeness, to truth. And so, we arrive at the closing moment of this journey. But really, it's not a conclusion. It's an opening, a beginning. Because now you've seen too much. You've remembered what your soul always knew. You don't need to be loved to be worthy. You already are. And now comes the question that only you can answer. What will you do with this knowing? Will you go back to begging, breaking, bending, or will you rise into the version of you that no longer clings, no longer performs, no longer betrays herself for proximity? If you come this far, it means something inside you is ready to walk away from the cage, ready to love with wings, not chains, ready to become the love you spent years seeking in others. So here's a ritual, not for me, for you. Go to the comments. Write this: I choose my peace over fear. Let it be your vow, your declaration, your reminder. Because the world doesn't need more love stories based on pain. It needs more love stories based on truth. And that starts with the one between you and you. So let go. Let go with dignity. Let go with gratitude. Let go knowing that letting go is not giving up. It is coming back to yourself. And that, my friend, is the most powerful thing you will ever do.